Average Joes. Back with the video, and we're doing a booze and books, but we have a special guest this week. It's just me, Liz, and Lauren. Lauren, how's it going?
Good. How's it going?
Awesome. Good. How are you?
Pretty good. I know we have a big time difference from where we live, so it's morning here and it's night over there. So
Yeah,
I'm really
I was gonna say one of
work.
us is drinking in the morning and one of us isn't. I was gonna let everybody else decide, but hey, there we go. That's fine. Time difference has made this a little challenging, but you know what? We're both pretty excited to do it, get it done, and I know you were one of the first ones to comment on our booth and books, and you just, hey, I want to do it. Cool, we're down. I want people to join too. So, yep, happy for that. And today we're drinking Palomas, and we are doing, and the theme with the Paloma. Oh man, yours looks so much better than ours. You went for the full presentation. You know, when I did the sours and the old fashions, those look really good. But then, like, I think people started caring less about the actual drink making, because I actually showed making the drink, and then it was just like I saw my drop off rate. I was like, all right, I'm not going to show drinks anymore. I'm just going to talk about them. So,
well, anyway, I'm fresh and new to this.
Yeah, there we go. A new perspective. Maybe they'll like your drinks better. So a Paloma is basically just tequila, and you can do it with grapefruit juice, but it's with lime, grapefruit soda, maybe like a squirt or something, Jarritos, something like that. You can put a little sugar, whatever in it, but traditionally it's just tequila and grapefruit. So we actually have grapefruit LaCroix as well, the pamplemousse. I don't know why they don't call it grapefruit. Everything else is normal name, but it's called pamplemousse if you've ever seen those. So we got those for ours, and 1800 is our tequila of choice for today. But the theme, what's that?
I live in an area of the country that's passionately in love with HEB, so I've got my HEB grapefruit juice.
Oh, there you go. And a tequila place.
And this is my tequila.
Oh, nice. So the theme that we're tying in with the Paloma, so it's going to be kind of a reverse of our sours, to where, you know, when you drink grapefruit juice, it's kind of sour at the front, kind of a tart at first, but then it'll even out. So it's the reverse is books that might have started a little bit sour, a little bit meh, not a great start. Maybe I mean, maybe if you like sour, it could be, but to me, it's a little bit of a sour, slow, iffy start, but then got better, got sweet. You know, kind of like Sour Patch Kids versus sour, then they're sweet. But we had to make this a drink version of it. So Palomas are first they're sour, then they're sweet, and I might even have to title it that just because. So, you want to kick us off, Lauren?
Sure. I guess, well, should I introduce my channel first?
Oh, yeah, I forgot to say that. So, hey, Lauren, go ahead and introduce yourself, because I'm professional at this kind of thing.
So. It's okay. It's our first time, and it's our first rodeo. So,
yeah.
No harm, no foul. My channel is called Paperback Empire, and I read primarily sci-fi, but I really love urban fantasy. And I read some high fantasy, and I'm trying to get back into horror, but those are like the things I primarily read and talk about. And that's what I've been going on over here. So I'm gonna try to talk about like those kinds of books in this video. So.
Yeah, and I think our tastes overlap a lot, because you do throw in some thrillers and mysteries, some horror. I've only just recently got into. I've only read like I think one, but I think in October I'm going to try some others. But also, you are the only person that I've seen on BookTube or anywhere that has read The Rook and Stiletto, which she has also read. So we are definitely in the minority of that. And there's some other ones that I see in your background that we care as well that aren't as known. But and you, I think I saw the Atlas 6 was on your list, and she just finished that yesterday or 2 days ago.
Yeah, I drew it for, it's one of my September books, so
it's good.
Gonna be starting it pretty soon.
It's good.
You like it?
Enjoy it. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I love the cover of it. It's such a beautiful book. I hope that the story holds up to the cover.
I liked it. There were some moments where I was like, oh, I don't know, but it was good. I really did enjoy it. I got through it pretty quick.
There were a few times where you were like, I don't think you're going to enjoy it, but then you would come back and
kind of reel it back in.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
So now that we have introductions out of the way, what is the first book that on your list that you want to talk about?
I think the first book that I want to talk about, let's talk about, so I've got some books that are sour turn sweet and some sweet turn sour. Should I, because
You
I
can
have
go
a
with
few.
you can go with whatever order you want to talk about. You know that we kind of just wing it and see what happens. So
Okay. Well, you know what? I'm going to talk about then the book I think I finished most recently, which it occurred to me yesterday. I think I was like, whoa, this would actually make this list really well. And it is a indie book called Nightfall by Daniel Barnett, which is a book that Leslie at, the Nerdy Narrative, it's a book, she loves this series. And I read it for the Buzzword Challenge because it has like the the prompt was time of day. So and it's like a horror, it's a horror novel.
so that's the Nightmare Land Chronicles, right?
Yeah, the Nightmare Land Chronicles. It's book 1 of the Nightmare Land Chronicles. But yeah, it started out, I wasn't sure about it. The writing was a little clumsy, I won't lie. But by the end of that book, I was like hooked, like absolutely hooked. And I couldn't stop thinking about it, which, for me, I'm not sold on series easily. Like I'm not the kind of person to like buy a whole series if I haven't read a book in it. But after I finished it, I bought all of them that are out, which goes against my nature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's amazing.
Leslie's definitely sold it on me, and that's actually when I said I wanted to get into horror. I think that's toward the top of my list for October, because all of them are on Kindle Unlimited as well, and I'm a huge fan of Kindle Unlimited. So yeah, that's definitely made its way up there. I mean, we'll see how. I mean, I typically read my Kindle before I go to bed, and if I'm reading horror before bed, it's not great. But we'll see how it goes. I mean, I definitely want to read it, so I might just flip flop during the day. But yeah, she's 100% sold me on those.
Yeah. Well, I will warn you because I know you like books that wrap up really tightly.
Oh,
But there's an author's note at the end of the book that I think he's writing them back to like with only a couple months between each book. So
wow.
yeah, it has kind of a serialized feel to it. So though the first book, it doesn't wrap up in a neat little package, like it's kind of, I think it's sort of meant to be that way to sort of draw out the suspense. And he promises in the author's note that it will be a very satisfying conclusion whenever you get to the end of the series. So potentially
well,
has
that's
a really
good.
big payoff.
Okay, well, at least it's pretty open about it. Yeah, I mean, it seems. I mean, I know one came out this year, so it seems like they've been coming out pretty fast anyway. So,
Yeah.
I'll give it a shot. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Liz.
So the first one on my list is Wool, which is the first book in the Silo series. And my reason for this, starting out sour and then getting sweet is very different from yours. For me, it's because I don't usually read sci-fi. Like it's not my thing. But it's one of his favorite series, and he's been talking about it for years. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to read it. And it started out slow. And I think probably the biggest reason it started out slow was because I was expecting to not like it. And so
I'll do it.
Yeah.
Stop giving suggestions.
Yeah. So, the more I got into it, the more I liked it. And by the end of the book, I was sold, and I finished the entire series. So I enjoyed it. It was good. But it was a very slow start for me.
I can understand that because there's a certain degree of world building to it, and like the first book was written as 5 short story like novellas that were strung together. So it's weird to read it as an omnibus because like the first one is with one character and the second one goes to a different character, someone else in there, and then like so you're just kind of getting your basis for everything. But by the end, it's built up to
it all comes together. And so I think it was also hard for me because the two characters didn't really they never actually came together until like towards the end, to where the stories actually aligned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that had to do with writing too, because I think after the 5 short story novellas came up, the next 2 books were just books.
Yes.
Instead of the same type sort of thing. So I guess, publication, whenever things get picked up, can kind of do that. But yeah, I could see that. It was a little slow building.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. It was wool, which for me, I have like the full bind up. So I read the whole thing, like just beginning to end. And so it kind of had the opposite effect on me. Like I started out and was like really excited. And the further I got into it, I was like, I'm burning out on this.
Oh yeah, because that would be really long.
Yeah, it's quite, I mean, it's pretty dense. But yeah, the concept of that book is like A1.
Yeah, I think the silo itself is like awesome character, like the environment of that, and and it is, if you, I guess if you commit enough to the silo, then it's great. Like I've read, that's actually the only series where I've read fan fiction because people just pick a silo or just pick something, some timeline in the silo, and we'll just write about it. And I was like, hey, the silo is cool. You can pretty much write about it with anything as long as you incorporate the dynamics of the silo. It's kind of cool, and then just each writer brings their own style too.
I love it. I love that. I just love it when people love a story so much that they have to like be a part of it. I'm no writer. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I could never do it. I mean, I'll probably invent my own stories maybe in my head, but I'm not going to put them down on paper. Yeah, all right. Let's see. I'm going to talk about first The Black Company because I actually just finished book 3 today. And for The Black Company, there's 4 omnibuses. I never know the plural for that. But there's 4, yeah, omnibuy, right? There's 4 omnibus. So the first 3 are the books of the North, and the first 3 books, they're like 250 pages long each. The first book, the narrative, Glenn Cook, his narrative choice is really, really hard to get into, and the first book is very, very confusing, and it's written through the annals, which are like journals, but you don't know they're written through the journals until like farther into the book. And so you're just like reading it and you're like, dots aren't connecting because you're in this person's head that's writing them, but you don't know you're in their head because as they're writing them. So like once you put those pieces together, you're like, oh, okay, I guess he doesn't need to explain this because he's just writing his own thing, but that's not actually explained to you. So a lot of people who started reading that kind of tapped out after the first book because of the writing style. But then book 2 was fantastic. It was so good because you actually divide to like more of a typical, I think, kind of third person, first person. I don't know perspective very well. But there's 2 different POVs. And then I just finished book 3, and that one also started off a little rough because they introduced more journal type entries. But the ending was so good. I just finished today. I rushed through the last like 50 pages or so. But yeah, Black Company for sure. It has a really rough start. So rough that people will DNF the series, the book, and just give up on, even though there's so many parts that are kind of worth it at least this point. I mean, I'm only 3 out of 10 books through, but yeah. So The Black Company is my first one because it is fresh off my mind.
And that's how long is that series again?
It's 10 books, but
that's so
like
long.
I know it definitely does seem long when you look at it, but like I said, the first 3 books total 700 pages, like all together.
Okay.
So each book are kind of small, and like later on, some of the books they're all about that size. That they give and take some, but page count wise, it's really not that long. It's like 2 Stormlight books or something, 2 or 3.
Those are boat anchors.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so funny. I read so little high fantasy, and like it seems like every high fantasy is like this giant series. And to me, even like the book series, I'm like, 3 books, that's such a huge commitment.
Yeah. And that's why standalones are so hard to find and so hard to throw in because it's like anytime a fantasy writer has a story, they're like minimum 3 books. Like, well, I got to build my world. I got to tell you all this lore and create an entire atmosphere and history. And it's like, well, you could just like tell me a quick story, but that's fine. All right. What you got next?
Let's do a book that I brought a pile of books here. I have books with me because I'll forget stuff if I don't have a visual reference. A book that I read another one that kind of started sour but turned sweet for me was The Lies of Locke Lamora.
That's been on my list for a long time.
Yeah, and this book, it's funny the way it was really more of like sort of sour the whole time I was reading it. But then after I finished it and closed it, I was like, that was actually a really good book. And the more time passes, the more I'm like, I really appreciate what it does. I think the reason it was a little sour for me was It's I think it's one of the first grimdark. Actually, I read the first book or two in the Game of Thrones, the first like 2 or 3 books, but I had watched the show on TV, so I was expecting it to be, kind of like that grimdark, whatever. So The Lies of Lamora was the first like grimdark book that I read with no idea what it was, and so it's pretty dark, and I mean there's some upsetting stuff that happens in it, and so while I was reading, I was just like, this is really upsetting, but it's so well written. It's incredibly well written. It's one of the most well written books I think I've probably ever read, and the ending, it is just absolutely, it might even be the best ending I've ever read in a book, which is saying a lot. I'm a harsh critic on endings on books that can like destroy a book for me, but it's fantastic, as a fantastic ending. So that's definitely one for me.
I didn't realize it was very dark or grimdark. I know it was adult, and it's about like a heist and like
Yeah.
that type setting, which I absolutely love. And it seems up my alley because I've also heard the characters are pretty enjoyable too.
Yeah.
I just know that 3 books are out and no idea what, it's one of those stalled series that you never know when it's going to continue. I'm sure
Yeah.
the first one could kind of sub as a standalone, I've heard. I just haven't picked it up yet.
It really can. That like the way that it ends, I mean, it's clearly open to be a series or whatever, because that was the intention, but the way it ends, it is just like, it's like a mic drop. Like it brings the whole thing full circle.
Wow.
The sense of satisfaction, you will close that book feeling utterly satisfied. But yeah, I think the reason it felt so dark to me, it really kind of has like heavy themes of like sort of the wealth gap and the separation from the rich from the poor, and that kind of a theme where it's like, here's all the wealthy people, and here's all the lowly peasants that are being like crushed beneath the weight of this this hierarchy or whatever. It can be a little heavy on me, that particular concept. But that's just like a personal thing, so that may or may not feel dark to you.
You've read Mistborn, right?
I read the first book.
Okay, so we see it in that, so kind of there's like the nobles, and then there's just everybody else.
Yeah, it's very similar in that way. The Lies of Lamora, because they're like street gangs and stuff, and I mean they're doing some pretty bad stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like in Mistborn, it has that more of like a kind of a high adventure. In the Lies of Lamora, it's like revenge and backstabbing, and it's pretty dark. But yeah, if you have any interest in reading it, I would definitely say do it.
100%. All right.
So the next one on my list is Scythe. So it's the
Arc of the Scythe.
Yeah, first book in Arc of the Scythe. And it is the first book I ever listened to on
Audiobook?
On audiobook.
Really? Oh.
Yeah. So it was while I was underway.
Okay.
And I needed to pass time.
On ship. That's maybe talk for being on the ship.
And I was doing inventories for like hours. And so I would listen to this book, and normally I would just listen to a podcast or whatever was on there, and you had downloaded some books, and this was one of them. And I remember like getting into it, I was like, man, this is not my thing. Like, I'm not that I like, it's a dystopian book. And I have nothing against those. I've read a lot of them, but I don't know, there's something about it that I just had a really hard time getting into. But then, after listening to it for probably hours on end at the same time, I probably finished the book in like probably 2 or 3 days because of how long it took to just get all the work done. That I was able to like really, really get into it and couldn't wait to read or to listen to the second. And then the third book was there, and there's a fourth. No, it was the third one.
It was just 3.
So the first and the second one, and then it took probably 3 years later, finally listening to the third one. And so then I had a hard time getting back into it because then I have to like remember what the world was and what was happening. And so, but it ended very well. It was good.
I couldn't remember the beginning of that. But yeah, I don't think I had an issue with it just because I was already consuming audiobooks for a while then because of my commute was ridiculous at the time. Yeah, I mean I love Scythe. Have you read Scythe?
I have read Scythe. I think that I was sort of similar on like the first book, kind of. At first I was just like,
Yeah.
Is it because of the death?
Because of the death.
I was gonna say they casualize death. Either
yeah.
And I think maybe that was hard for me to wrap my head around and like
Yeah.
really get into. Like the whole book is about death, and then it's
death is like jury duty.
Yeah. It's, and I think I had a hard time like just getting into that and being okay with that.
Meanwhile, maybe it's just says kind of personality. Meanwhile, I'm like, man, how would I decide to kill people?
You asking me a question. It was like,
So how would you kill people?
I've never thought about it.
Questions you don't think you're gonna, or conversations you don't think you're gonna have with your spouse.
Well, and I also, I'm getting like this sort of older mindset, like, quit corrupting our youth. Like teaching our children to kill people. Like, what?
Nice.
But it was great. It was great. I really liked that book a lot. I think my interest kind of dwindled as I went through the series. But that's kind of how I am with series in general. But yeah, the Scythe was the same way. Like, I don't know about this. By the end of it, I was like, yeah, I'm on board for this.
Yep.
Honestly, like the third book, if I just took the toll, that one would qualify for this because there's a huge year gap, and then all this side stuff that they were doing, and for most of the book, what they were building up to, I'm like, man, I hope he doesn't flub up this ending because like everything was pointing to a different kind of ending that I wasn't expecting. I'm just like, man, don't mess this up. But then at the very end, like one chapter, it was like, holy cow, that all ended up buttoned up really nicely and really great.
Yeah, I remember commenting about that too. Like they covered the basis on ending.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very surprised. All right, next one, big one for me, and might be a surprise, but Malice.
Yeah, that's surprise.
So Faithful and Fallen is my number one when I did my top 10 series, my number one series. But Malice had such a rough beginning that at about the 20% mark, I debated on DNFing it because it was just so confusing and slow. There were so many POVs, the world I wasn't picking up on. The kids, I mean, when you start the series, the kids are like 14 or 15.
They're young, yeah.
They're like super immature and annoying. Like I just didn't really care about the kids, but I was like, oh, I'm just gonna push this through. And then he got Storm, and I'm like, I'm in. I'm good.
So I find that really funny that you had such a hard time with the POVs because you read all the Game of Thrones. And there's a million POVs in Game of Thrones to where I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm done. I'm not doing Game of Thrones anymore.
So okay, so I cheated with Game of Thrones because I think it was the same thing with you, Lauren, to where so I started reading book one, I didn't finish it. Season one came out, watched season one, then I read book 1, 2, 3, and 4. Because I was like, all right, I see the name, I saw the person and that name. Now I can visualize the person in these places because it was a lot to take in, it was a lot to picture. So like, yeah, so I was able to picture that. But for this, it was hard at first, but once Storm came into the picture and some other things, I was bought in.
Yeah. I've been on the fence about that series.
I mean, obviously, I know what I'm going to say, but it just depends on how you feel toward, like, how do you feel toward action? Like, I know some people read fantasy and they're just like, whatever, but.
I like a lot of action.
Okay, well, then you'll love John Gwynn because he's one of the better action writers. I don't think you care about action, but you like the characters.
Yeah. I love the characters. I am definitely somebody that's drawn in by characters. Character-driven books are my thing. It's just like plot-driven books. One of the ones that I was going to add on here was Powder Mage because it's plot-driven and I could not buy into any of those characters. I don't think I liked a single one of them.
So it never got sweet.
No, and by the end of it, like I bought into the action. Like the action got me there, but like I still don't like the characters.
Yeah, they're not special.
Great.
They're not special. I think I'm more plot, but I'll mix it up some.
Yeah.
I mean, just variety wise.
All plot. I'm all plot.
Nice.
Like, I mean, I like really excellently written villains and a lot of action.
You would like Shadow of the Apt.
Yeah.
That's what we just started. So it's, funny enough, tomorrow we're doing a live stream on Alice's channel, and it is really, really good. There's a lot to that, but that's a whole other side thing. All right, so what's your next one?
Let's see here. How about we do a sweet turn sour,
All right.
which for me was the Shadow and Bone series.
Oh God.
Is it your favorite?
No.
I could tell.
Because I think it was funny because you, not to cut you off, but you read the first one and you were like, "This is good." And then you read the second one, was like, "This is the same thing."
Yeah, this
It's the exact thing.
like, nothing changed. It was the same story, just in a different book.
Well, I felt like the second book was just like, let's all go to this place. All right, let's go over here to this place. Now let's go. It's just like so boring. And then, actually, I like the first book and the second book. I was like, this is okay. There's a lot of like traveling around, but okay, whatever. And then the last book, I was just like, I am so over this. Like, I don't even know if I remember how it ends at this point. Like, as soon as
I don't
closed out,
remember.
I'm gonna act like that didn't happen.
Yeah, I can't remember how that. I honestly have
We haven't even watched the show.
No, we have not watched the show.
The show's fine. But man, that series, ooh, it
Yeah, that's
wore
probably
me
why I
out.
never picked it up.
It wore me out.
You wouldn't like it anyway. It's all love, and yeah, you would hate it.
Yeah.
It is not your thing.
A lot of goo eyes in it.
Yes, a lot of goo eyes in it.
I think I paid my YA dues.
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
All right, so my next one is Live Alone, which I've talked about before. And it's for the same reasons that I talked about before. It starts off just her life story is so hard to read. Just everything that she went through.
It's dark.
It is dark, and it was so hard for me to get through some of her past moments. I had such a hard time with it, but by the end of it, I rooted for her so hard. She is a great character, and she drove that book. And it was good. And then went on to read the second book, and it was also very, very good. So definitely started off rough because of, I guess you could say, a lot of triggers in there. 100%.
Yeah. So if you don't mind triggers, it's really dark. It's a mystery thriller about basically it's human sex trafficking.
Yep.
And
it's dark.
The girl, she got caught up in it when she was little. Then she grew up and became a detective who now prevents it and kind of does a Dexter-like vigilante, ones who slip through the cracks she takes care of.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
So like her backstory, it sucks, but it makes it is her character, and it gives her so much depth and reason. You're like you're 100% cheering for her, but it is rough in the beginning.
That sounds super intense.
If you like dark and you don't have many triggers and want that good payoff, I would highly recommend it. But there's that caveat.
Yeah, that sounds so intense.
It was very intense. To the point where I was to him at one point, I was like, I don't know if I can finish this. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to finish it.
Yeah. Have you read My Dog Vanessa?
My Dog Vanessa?
I have not.
I know people talk about it a lot. I don't know much about it. There was another one that came out recently that I feel like people were talking about as well. I'm gonna write that one down.
My Dog Vanessa is the one about the high school teacher who like grooms one of his female students, and basically the fallout that she experiences in the rest of her life because of this thing she went through as like a 15-year-old. It's the same kind of deal where it's just like pretty harrowing, hard to get through, and fairly graphic, honestly. I didn't rate that one. It shook me. I was like, I don't even know.
Actually, yeah. I'm feeling like a 2, but I don't want to give it that because I still,
yeah. It's still like it did a thing. Like it did something important. It said something important, but it wasn't like fun to read. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's hard to come away from those books with like, that was so great.
Yeah.
I think I felt that way about Lovely Bones.
I've read that. Right? Yeah.
No, it's have you read Lovely Bones?
I
read it in high school. Yeah, and it's about like a girl who's murdered. It's a mystery about her, but it has to do with like child rape and that kind of stuff, if I remember right.
Scandinavian Chestnut Man.
Oh yeah.
They are dark.
Yeah.
Scandinavians write some dark books, but very, very good.
Dark.
Scandinavian writer.
Yeah.
All right, my next
the Poppy War.
we bought the first two. I just haven't gotten to it. I don't know. For some reason, the more popular a series gets or trilogy gets, I'm just like, it'll always be there. I'm just gonna put something else.
Well, I just bring it up because it takes a incredibly and unexpected dark turn, like an nth hour, and it goes there. And it, if you do ever read it, just there's some trigger warnings for you. It gets dark whenever it feels like, oh, this is this magic school and fun, and you're like, what has happened? God.
Took a turn. I mean, I guess yeah. I don't mind those parts, but it is kind of just funny.
I digress.
So my next one is The Dark Tower. I haven't finished this one. This is just a series as a whole. So Dark Tower by Stephen King, and I'm really just talking about the Gunslinger. So the start of the Dark Tower series. I've only read the first 3 of them. I'm on book 4. And Gunslinger, it's kind of on purpose, kind of like you're confused with it, pretty much on purpose. Almost like, not quite like The Black Company, but because there's so many tie-ins with the beginning of the Dark Tower series and the Gunslinger that the first book, you don't know what the heck is going on. But as you read book 2 and book 3 and on, you're like, oh, I know that tie now back to the first book. Oh, I know this. So you almost have to read the Gunslinger first and last in that series because you have to see what all you missed the first time because of how kind of time loops and how the tie-ins later on were all present in the first one. But it was a very rough start going through that book. I was so confused. It was my second Stephen King book ever read. And the first one was Firestarter, and I was like, great, this is really good. Read that one, and I was like, holy crap, I don't know what I'm getting myself into with Stephen King. I'm confused, but it seemed fairly common to be confused with Gunslinger. And then I just read 2 and 3, and it was totally fine. So Gunslinger as a whole, so that would be Dark Tower starting the series, is pretty sour at first, but gets really, really good.
Interesting. That's another one I've been on the fence about. Seems like on BookTube, it's making the rounds. Everyone's just in love with it. But like everyone in my real life that I know that's read it is just like, eh.
Oh, wow.
Like, but I want to know, like, what's the rage here?
That's crazy because like I was talking to somebody about what I was reading, and then somebody told me that, like, I didn't even know. My sister apparently read Dark Tower a long time ago, and then one of my best friend's girlfriends read it and absolutely loved Dark Tower. And so it was like, oh, hey, I heard you're reading this. That's one of their favorite series. And I'm like, oh, okay. I didn't realize. Like, I don't know why. I don't think anybody else reads outside of YouTube, but
do they?
Yeah, right? Like you go in social situations, nobody's talking about books. I just didn't think people read anymore.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is making its rounds now. I see. I know Leslie's been talking about it. I am slowly going through the entire multiverse. I don't know why I decided to do it, but I was like, I found this reading order online. I was like, yeah, I'm just going to do that in order. So there's a long gap between 3 and 4. I still have to get through a couple other books.
Yeah. I think we've got the first couple books in that series here. So maybe we'll finally just do it. Like we own them. So why not?
Yeah. Well, see, now you know Gunslinger is going to be confusing. You're not going to know what's going on, kind of. So go into the second one, join 3.
I don't mind that being confused in a book. Like I kind of like being confused. It's like what makes me my mind just is like really gets to like I want to figure it out, like solve the puzzle. So if I'm confused, that's more likely going to keep me involved and make me put a book down. So maybe I'll do it. Maybe I'll read it.
That's the main appeal with mysteries and thrillers, but like I know they're going to pay off at some point. I feel like I actually have a chance to fill it out. I think sometimes fantasy authors are just like, no, I'm just not going to tell you.
True. Very true.
So what's your next one?
Let's see here. I think one that started sour and turned sweet for me was Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. It's really funny whenever I read this. It was long before I was on BookTube or whatever, so I knew nothing about this book. Her books have a pretty big following. People talk about them all the time, but I went into it having no idea what it was. And for, I would say 75% of it, I was just like, because it has, the way that Naomi Novik writes is kind of fairy tale-ish, which isn't really my thing. But so for most of it, I was just like, I'm kind of meh on it. But the ending, it was a really good ending. It pulled me in. Yeah, it also kind of got a little dark, which I appreciated in a fairy tale sort of way. But yeah, that was definitely, I have a whole lot to say about it other than started out man and ended like, yeah, I'd recommend that. That's good.
Does it have a sequel?
I don't think so. I think as far as I know, I think she usually just does like standalone.
Yeah, I say there's other books that she's written that are standalones that are also
okay. I've seen the style.
Yeah.
I know it's been on our list, but we don't have it. We don't have it. No.
I've been wanting to read it.
I mean, I dabble in some of the fairy tale retellings, and I do like some of them that put either a dark spin on it or like a different spin. Like Cinder put a really good spin on it.
It was different.
It was that was a mix of appeal because it had the sci-fi for me and
the fairy tale for me.
Yeah, and you read all the fairy tales.
Yeah.
Especially the dark ones. I really, really like the ones with the dark spin on them.
Yeah. Yeah. You should give. Have you read the Hazelwood?
I have not. We haven't.
We've had it forever.
Read it yet. Yeah.
I mean, it's not a retelling. It's not a retelling or anything. But it definitely has sort of it starts in the real world, but then kind of drifts into this sort of fairy tale type land. But it's very dark.
Oh yeah, yeah. That So I've read quite a few fairy tale books that start either in kind of like present day and then go into fairy tale, or something along those lines. And I've loved it. I don't know. I'm really into fairy tales, so.
We're definitely getting off on a side tangent, but I got her this for Christmas, the Grimm.
Ooh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's really nice.
Really, really cool. These are really, really dark. I remember on Christmas, we opened it up and read one really random. It was like one paragraph and it was super dark. It was like, had to do with somebody's grave, like putting stuff on top of their grave.
Yeah.
I know that all the like Disney fairy tales are based off the Grimm series, like the Grimm brother tales, and they're not cute, and they're very dark and kind of scary. And then we got this book, and I picked a random one and read it to him, and I was like, yeah, see, I told you.
Yeah. It was hilariously dark. I was like, wow, okay, we might have to pick this one up.
Yeah.
Also check out this is another this just happens to be sitting on my desk, but it has like a number of little fairy tales in it. I think it's in the Grishaverse. It's not the Grisha characters though. I think
okay.
Language of Thorns.
Yeah, I think this is supposed to be like in the Grishaverse. These are the stories that the parents would tell their children or whatever.
Oh, okay.
And it is dark and it is really, really good. And it has just beautiful, beautiful illustrations in it. The way it's kind of illuminated on the sides. But this is really good. This is a really good one if you like dark fairy tales.
Yeah, we'll have to get that for sure.
And I have to mention, if Leslie is watching this video, this is like one of the best smelling books. Just had to throw that in there.
Oh wow! Well, definitely have to tag her and say, hey, make sure to watch to the whatever minute mark.
Yeah.
So I have a couple more. You're out, right?
Yeah. Oh no, I have one more, so you can go.
Oh well, no, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay.
We'll stay in turn.
So my last one is Spellslinger
By Sebastian de Castro.
Yes. So when I first started reading it, I was expecting kind of the same storytelling as the Greatcoats. And so since that's kind of what I was expecting, it took me a little bit longer to get into it because it wasn't as witty. And it's definitely YA, and you can see that it's YA. And so it was a little bit harder to again, because of my expectations to get through certain parts of it. But once I got into it, it's good. I've read two books so far. And they're interesting. They're fun to read. So
I've not get on to those, so I have nothing
Yeah.
to say about it.
yeah.
That's a book in that series?
No, so it's just written by the same author. It's completely
okay.
different. It's about kind of, it starts out in like a school setting with these magically gifted kids, and then one kind of gets outcast, and his kind of how he deals with it and what he goes through and all that kind of stuff, and the trouble that he gets into along the way, and the sidekick who kind of helps him along the way. And it's witty, but it's different. It's different than the Great Coats.
That sounds really good. I really love that premise. That I don't know if you call it, not so much a trope, but a plot device or whatever.
Yeah.
The school and all. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't read one of those in a long time. I definitely want to pick this one up because I love the Greycoats. I like Sebastian De Castell's writing. He's really good at writing action because he was a stunt choreographer in real life. And I've heard the Animal Companion is good in this one.
Yeah, the Animal Companion he is so funny. Like, he brings so much comic relief to the book. And there is a lot of action and a lot of fighting and that kind of stuff. And it's kind of Western-ish, like almost, because his sidekick is she kind of talks with like a Southern twang, kind of. It's
How do you write with a Southern twang?
It's like the words that she uses, like I imagine like an old Western when I and the way that she's described and all of that stuff. Yeah,
that sounds cool. I like that.
Yeah.
It's called Spellslinger.
Yes, that's the first book, is Spellslinger.
I think it's the name of the series too, right?
I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, I think that's the name of the series. Okay. So I'll go a way different direction, kind of outside of fantasy. A Michael Crichton book, The Great Train Robbery. And this is a kind of historical fiction about a train robbery in England in the 1800s. And I'm not really one for historical fiction at all. I love heists, and I've wanted to get into Michael Crichton, and because I saw, it was a heist book, I was like, all right, awesome. I should like this. But in the beginning, I think he was definitely setting up the stage to tell you about what's going on now, how there's this whole thing at the beginning about railroad construction and what it's going to do for the country and all this stuff. And I'm like, this is kind of reading like a historical text, and I don't really want to just read a history book. And so I wasn't bought in because it just came off as history, not like a fun historical fiction. But then after 50 or so pages, there actually the characters kind of got into it, and the planning started to happen, and it actually naturally progressed into a fun story of how they were going to pull off this great train robbery. So it's really cool, and I'm pretty sure it's based on like an actual true story too. So rough start in the beginning, because I have tried another historical fiction before, and I DNF'd that like 50 pages because it was basically just a history story. But this one shaped up to be really, really good, and it was a good ending.
I'll end this on a high note. A book that started sour and turned sweet for me was The Diviners, Libba Bray, which is actually a series, but I've only read the first book. Have you read it?
No, but I in high school and college love Libba Bray.
I know, I've heard that.
Oh, really?
I love her books, all of them. I have them. Parents' house.
I heard her name sounded familiar. I was like,
she was one of I've read them all. That must be a newer one, maybe.
I'm not sure when these came out. I know it's like a 3 or 4 book series.
Yeah.
Let's see, this one
newer than me being in high school.
Yeah.
This came out in 2012, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's fun. Yeah.
But this was actually this is like a kind of a mystery suspense horror. It's like I went into this thinking like, oh, I wasn't sure, like this is gonna be like a YA historical fiction or something like that. No, this is, it's set in the 20s, so it definitely has like kind of the
we like the 20s,
that era, but it's got some like pretty dark, like supernatural stuff happens in it. And I think whenever I first started reading it, the main character is she's so annoying. I mean, she stays annoying throughout the whole book, and
Everything else just gets better around her.
yeah, but it's like, it's one of those things where she's kind of this sort of like stuck on herself debutante type of girl, and just very self-involved, but like some really messed up stuff happens and she kind of has to handle it and deal with it. And so you're just, it makes her a little less annoying. But it's the story itself, it really pulled me in. By the end of it, I was like, I think I'm going to continue with this series. It's really good. So if you like that kind of, like that era and sort of a mystery with some like kind of horror elements, it's a good one.
So I think she wrote A Great and Terrible Beauty.
I don't think I've heard of that one.
It's a trilogy, and it is also kind of set back in, I want to say actually in like the late 1800s, and it's kind of like witches and that kind of stuff. Starts off in like a school, and then like they go in almost into like another world, and it's really good. It's really good.
Okay, I'll have to check that out. A Great and Terrible Beauty.
Good
Yeah,
old
definitely
fashioned. All right, I guess it's me because you're out.
Yeah.
Actually, I can probably talk about Shadow of the Apt, even though we mentioned it earlier. So it is the first book is The Empire of Black and Gold. First of another, it's a 10-book series, so it is a bit longer, but it's so good, by Adrian Tchaikovsky. And the world is ridiculously fleshed out and realized. And even though this is his debut book, there's so much awesomeness to it. But to start off was kind of rough and confusing. In the beginning, there's like an invasion that happens, and then that's chapter 1. Then chapter 2 is like a 17-year jump, and they do tell you about that jump. But then there's like this fencing competition that's happening in chapter 2, and at the end of chapter 2, it gets to the final match, and they just cut it and go to the next chapter. And I'm like, all right, is this going to be a flashback to like explain how the ending's going to happen? And the third chapter is something that's happening that it sounds like it happened before the first chapter, but it didn't. It's just the same thing kind of happening again in the third one. And I'm just like, are we time jumping right now? And then there was like 4 or 5 characters that are introduced, and like they weren't very distinguishable at first. So like it took all the characters being separated at one point to actually understand and separate them. But after that, it was like 25-30% in, and you're like, because there's just so much to the world and so much to the people and the different races and stuff, that it takes a while to get fleshed out. But once it is really, really good. And the plot is very good. The world is really it's awesome about it, because it mashes bugs, like insects, and people, and like the cultures are the races are based off of insects, and like each insect race of like, they're still human and have human traits. That was also what was confusing, but they're still human, but they all have their race has some sort of innate bug-like ability to whatever they are. So like the ant people again, they just look like people. They can communicate telepathically. The wasps can shoot a sting. So there's all these things that go into like all these races, and there's a bunch of different kinds of bug races. And it's just really interesting how he made this ridiculous world and the war that's going on. And it's just starting, because it's only one of 10 books. But that one had a little bit of a rough start, but it is so good. And that's what I'll be doing a live stream about tomorrow on Alan's channel.
Awesome. Adrian Tchaikovsky has a thing for insects.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. Yeah, you read. Yeah, I haven't read it, but I know that one's about spiders in space.
Yeah. I mean, it's it's funny that's like, that must be like his signature thing. He's like, I have this idea, but I think I really want to take it to the next level, so I'm going to throw some insects.
Yeah, maybe he was studying to be a whatever bug scientist they are. I don't know what that is, because like, you know how some, like, speaking of Michael Crichton, he was an actual doctor, and then he just switched to writing and used that in his writing. Or just like bugs. He's just a weird guy, but it's so
Yeah.
original.
Yeah, the Children of Time, it's like the bugs in it are, which I guess this could be a spoiler or something. I don't know if you want to edit it out or whatever.
Everybody
It's
knows
like
there's spider people.
spider people. There's also insect or ant people.
Oh,
So, and they either like, you know, West Side Story rivals or something.
that sounds awesome.
It is. It's the way he writes. It's funny. Like whenever you talk about it out loud, it's like this sounds ridiculous. Like it's like, and then the spiders come along, and then the ants they fight them, and they're you know, and it sounds like a comic book or something. But the way he writes, it is just he's so good. He writes so well, and it feels like really intense and like really meaningful. But it's like you get attached to these like insects.
Well, 100% put that on one of your origami stars.
Okay.
Empire Black and Gold or Shadow of the App.
Will do.
Yeah, it's if you already like Adrian, then yeah, this is really, really good.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll check it out for sure.
All right. What about you? What's your next one?
I don't think I have really anything else that's worthwhile to talk about. Yeah.
I'll just have two honorable mentions. One's the Queen's Thief. That one starts off slow because you don't really know the main character very well, and people say he's kind of whiny in the beginning of the first book, but you learn toward the end of the first book how smart he really is and how not really kind of manipulative, and the fact that at the end of each book is kind of like you'd see all of these chess pieces have moved while you were reading and you didn't realize. But in the beginning, it could be really, really slow, especially the first book.
Mhm.
And Priority the Orange Tree. And the reason why I say that one is just because it was an 800-page standalone, really, really good. But the world is huge. Yeah, the world is huge. There's a bunch of characters, and it was hard to tell, like, because there's two different kind of like sides of the dragon people, and then one of I think it was, I don't know if there was only one male POV, but there's the old guy POV. I found really annoying, and like his kind of came out. It was hard to tell how he tied in for a while, so that one was confusing at first, but it turned out really, really good. That's a really good standalone fantasy.
I said the same thing.
What?
That the guy never really, she couldn't figure out where he fit in.
Yeah.
Like almost the entire time she was reading it.
Basically, toward the end, also
Yeah.
he like had maybe one little thing that he did, and it was still like
It wasn't really an important character.
yeah,
It's not important enough to have a actual point of view.
Yeah, it's like they just had like one task left, and it's like, man, I guess I can just invent another character to put in alongside all this stuff so that this task can get done, and that was about it. Yeah.
That's another one that I prefer. Like my favorite kind of book is just a big fat standalone. Like I would prefer to like really get hooked into one book, and then when I'm done, like move on. And that's one of those. It's like the rare fantasy anomaly, big fat standalone.
Yep.
When you're done.
Very rare.
So really, you just stack 3 trilogies together and just have it fat stack like that. There you go.
Duct tape the bindings.
Yeah, but they don't make as much money because they can sell 3 books. Why sell one book when you can sell 3?
Yeah.
Well, if we're doing honorable mentions, I actually do have a couple of honorable mentions. Couple of sci-fi books. Warcross by Marie Lu.
Okay,
which
I've read that.
Started out sweet for me and turned sour. The amount of discussion of the main character's hair color, just by the end of it, it's just like, I get it. Like she has rainbow colored hair. And the funny thing about it too is that she is extremely poor, but she has this like wild hairstyle. And I'm just like, they don't sell that kind of dye down at CVS. Like I don't know.
I call BS on her hair. You know, there's
like,
virtual reality games going on, but I'm calling BS on the hair.
Yeah. Exactly. That would be an expensive dye job. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, so it was a good story, but yeah, I was just by the end of it, I'm like, if I have to hear about your rainbow colored hair one more time, I'm going to throw this book at the wall. And then a book that started out kind of sour and turned sweet for me was Illuminate. Another like Yeah, it has sort of this YA goo goo eye thing going on, but I got so pulled into it by the end of it. The It's like it's like it snuck up on me. Like I was like, the whole time, like, I'm not really into this. And then by the end of it, I'm like, oh my God, I am so into this. Like, I'm so into this. Um, there's also kind of like an AI type of character that I got really, really attached to. So it's, by the time I closed that book, I was like, I'm into this one. So yeah.
It's like those shows where like if you're walking by somebody in the family room and they're watching something, I'm like, man, what's this trash? And you watch for like 5 minutes and you're like, well, crap, now I gotta see how this thing ends.
Yeah.
Even though it's completely terrible.
Yeah. Got really pulled into that one. So
Thank you so much for being on
yeah,
and joining,
absolutely.
waking up and deciding to have tequila with breakfast. It's so aggressive.
I have no problem with it. This has been great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, next time we'll have to flip flop it and we'll wake up at 6 a.m. and have some of something. I don't know what. Or
Yeah.
well, we'll actually be in the States in the next couple of months, 6 months or so. But either way, thank you so much for joining. And
cool. It's like, oh, you're real people.
yeah, right. It's like I normally talk like throwing like I'm obviously the person that watches the video and comments as I'm uh watching, so I might have like two or three, and it's like it's kind of like I'm having a conversation, but it's not.
Yeah. I really appreciate that, by the way. It's like it makes you feel really good to be like, wow, this person, they're really interested in this, because you never know. Sometimes it feels the whole like screaming into the void or whatever, but if you comment a couple of times, it's like, no, he's really watching this. He didn't just randomly click on a spot and be like, hey.
Yeah, and
It's meaningful.
yeah, no problem. I normally watch a lot. I'll start a queue and I'll watch videos while I'm cooking or whatever, and then it's like I have my phone, I link it up to, and as I do something, I'll stop. I'm like, all right, well, I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna get on my phone. I'm gonna do that real quick.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, cool. I just think of it, and sometimes I'm just like, man, is this too many comments? Should I spread a long one? And it's like, whatever. I don't really care.
I love it. It's great. It does. It feels like a conversation. It feels
Yeah.
like a conversation for sure. In fact, I appreciate it so much that I've like started trying to do that with other people's videos, because it somehow it means more. Like I don't know. It's like you're really watching it.
Yeah,
really
no problem. No. I get that. Yeah, especially because like if it's super random thing where like I know when I recorded it, like if it's 3/4 through and it's like somebody picked out a little detail, I'm like, oh hey, they're actually paying attention instead of just something generic.
Yeah.
But appreciate it either way. Yeah. So we'll do this again. Well, so this was our books that started sour and then turned sweet, or sour or sweet and then a little bit sour, whatever it was. So what are some of your books that started sour and then got sweet after you got going, or were pretty sweet to start off and then ended a little bit sour? Let's chat more in the comments. Us, Lauren, everybody. So thank you for coming and watching this video, and let us know what some of those books are, and we'll see you in the next Booze and Books. Cheers, Lauren.
Cheers.